Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the July 6, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Commissioner Munoz, since you just sat down, would you mind leading us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Michelle, can you please help us with roll call?
Yes, hang on just 1 second. Okay. Alex Velto is absent. JD Draculich.
Here.
Peter Gower.
Here.
Mark Johnson is absent. Arthur Munoz.
Here.
Sylvia Villanueva.
Here.
Kathleen Taylor.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3 is public comment. Michelle, would you like to read your announcement prior to?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
It should be noted for those in the audience that comments are to be addressed to the Planning Commission as a whole. Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that the Planning Commission may not take action upon any matter not agendized for possible action on today's agenda. When you are called on for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name, and you will be afforded 3 minutes. If you are an attendee in the Zoom meeting and would like to make public comment at this time, please raise your hand. Lastly, while in this room, please be respectful. Warnings will be issued by the presiding officer if there is disruptive behavior, and you will be asked to leave chambers if the behavior continues. With that, we did receive correspondence for this item. They were forwarded to the Planning Commission and have been entered as part of the record. I have not received any public comment cards, and I don't believe anybody is raising their hand to make public comment via Zoom. I think we're good unless...
Okay, if we don't have any general public comment, we'll close public comment and move on to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes. The first one is 4.1, minutes from the June 2nd, 2022 Planning Commission meeting.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Munoz, I need to abstain.
I will be doing the same.
I can make a motion to approve.
Okay,
Commissioner Draculich, a second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Motion carries.
So-
Next, sorry.
Hang on just a second. So Munoz and Taylor abstained, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to item number 4.2, which is the minutes of the June 15th, 2022 meeting.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gower, move to approve.
Commissioner Villanueva, I second.
Okay. Any
Madam-
further, sorry.
Sorry, Madam. I need to abstain.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Do we need a quorum to approve, since we have the last two abstentions or do we have a quorum? I'm sorry.
We have a quorum
Is that-
and we've been given, I think, legal advice previously that
Oh.
if we have a quorum of the folks that were in attendance at the meeting, we're good to go.
Cool.
Okay. Carl's nodding yes. So we have a motion and a second, one non-voter. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. And we will move on to item number 5, which is election of officers for possible action. Jason, do you want to take us through this process, please?
Sure. So Michelle, are you ready?
Hang on just a second.
Okay.
We're getting there.
While you guys are getting there, we'll just say thank you very much for all of your support tonight. We know we have a new technical system, so we appreciate everybody being here.
Okay, so we're on the election of officers, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So was there a motion or a recommendation yet?
We can go ahead and start off with the chair position.
Okay, Commissioner Velto is vice chair. He is not here this evening. He did express that he is interested in being chair if somebody wants to make that motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion for Commissioner Valto to be Chair of Planning Commission.
Commissioner Draculich, I second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, commissioners, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Congratulations, Commissioner Velto in Thailand. The next position is for vice chair, correct?
That's correct.
Well, since I can make a motion, I would motion J.D. Draculich as vice chair.
Commissioner Gower will second.
Wait. Hang on, sorry.
The anticipation.
And this is for Draculich for vice chair. I'm sorry, who made the motion?
Commissioner Taylor.
You. Second?
Commissioner Gower.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We should ask you, are you interested?
Yeah, I'm in.
Oh, okay, good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think that was an aye from Commissioner Villanueva.
Yeah, I don't, my mic was on, or off, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Commission. It's been a pleasure working with you and being part of this team for now, and I will turn it over to Vice Chair Draculich. Have fun.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor, which I haven't said before. It's usually Madam Chair. Just normal. All right, I guess we'll move on to item number 6, public hearings. Any person who has chosen to provide his or her public comment when a public hearing is heard will need to so indicate on the request to speak form provided to the secretary. Alternatively, you may provide your comment when item 3, public comment, is heard at the beginning of this meeting. With that said, we'll move on to item number 6.1, which is case number LDC 22000, Liberty Street conversion. A request has been made for a tentative map to convert an existing office building into 27 commercial condominiums in the mixed-use downtown Riverwalk District, MD-RD zone. The subject 0.663 acre site is located on the northwest corner at the intersection of East Liberty Street and Hatch Street. The subject site has a master plan use designation of downtown mixed use DT/MU. And I believe we'll be taking a presentation from the applicant.
Good evening. I'm Carrie Rohrmeyer for the record. Thank you for hearing our application. I think you'll find this a very straightforward request. Maybe you recognize this building, it's nearby. 245 East Liberty Street is a tentative map for a condo conversion for a commercial office as opposed to residential, which you see more frequently. The site complies with all the master plan and zoning requirements. There are professional offices in the use now. That should not change. There might be new tenants, but this is an ownership opportunity for small spaces, everywhere from either a single level down to much smaller square footages, up to 27 parcels. And you can see the building is in good condition. There are no changes proposed. It is 5 levels, has nice landscaping, has nice elevations. The building has been well kept. There's 180 parking spaces in the subterranean and then some on the surface. That suffices for the use as proposed and as existing. There will be room, and some of the parcels, the smaller parcels, are reserved in the basement for storage that will support the upstairs units. And the configurations of every floor are different, and that is because there will be smaller suites and it will be based on what tenants need. But the 27 parcels that are being created are listed here before you. And we think it's a really nice opportunity for economic development, new investment in ownership in our businesses and our urban core, in our downtown. The building, like I said, is in good shape. It had a buildings report included with the application. Everything was found to be in good condition, and the staff report recognizes that it meets all codes. So really, this is a tentative mapping exercise, which would be followed by a final map. And I am here if you have questions. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Feel free to jump in.
Thank you, and good evening, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Leah Brock, Assistant Planner with Development Services, City of Reno. This evening, I am following up on Ms. Romeyer's presentation, brief presentation, just a little bit more info for you. The subject parcel is located on the northwest corner at the intersection of East Liberty Street and Hatch Street. The applicant has proposed to convert an existing office building into 27 commercial condominiums. As previously stated, there will be no change in use in the structure, and there are no structural modifications being proposed with this tentative map. It is simply splitting one existing parcel into 27 commercial condominiums. The key issue analyzed in this request was conformance with the code standards. The request does not propose any physical modifications to the site or changes in use. So staff analyzed the existing site conditions and compared them with the current code standards. Our analysis did determine that the existing conditions are consistent with the surrounding area and in general conformance with Reno Municipal Code and the master plan. The site is located in the mixed-use downtown Riverwalk district, which encourages a mix of low-impact employment uses and high-density residential. Adjacent uses to the subject parcel include offices, professional services, and both single-family residential homes and multifamily residential complexes. This mix does provide for a live-work environment with easy access to the transit system and close proximity to downtown. The conversion of this office building from leased suites to ownership suites will continue to be compatible with the area and the zoning district. The subject site has a master plan land use designation of downtown mixed use. Again, the conversion from an office building with leased suites to an office building with private ownership suites does support existing businesses. It offers an opportunity for ownership and investment and supports a diverse mix of land uses. As proposed and with the recommended conditions, the project is in substantial conformance with the master plan land use designation and the applicable master plan goals and policies. Again, just to reiterate, the proposed conversion will convert the one parcel with an existing 5-story building into 27 parcels. The suites already exist and there are no changes proposed to the structure. There are 108 existing on-site parking spaces. The site does have an existing sidewalk and landscape buffer area with mature trees. Condition 6 was recommended that if any of the existing mature trees are removed, they are replaced with an equivalent standard. The project was reviewed by various city divisions and partner agencies. Courtesy notices were sent out to the property owners upon submittal of the project. No noted concerns have been received. Additionally, the project was presented to the Ward 3 Neighborhood Advisory Board and no comments were provided by the NAB. With the recommended conditions of approval, the existing site appears to meet or exceed code standards and addresses the applicable findings. Therefore, staff recommends approval subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. This concludes my presentation and I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Appreciate it. Kick it down to the commissioners for disclosures. Commissioner Gower, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. No disclosures.
Commissioner Munoz, no disclosures.
Commissioner Taylor, no disclosures.
Commissioner Villanueva.
Commissioner Villanueva, I'm familiar with the site and I read one email regarding the site.
Commissioner Draculich, I am familiar with the site. And at this moment, we'll move it on to any public comment on this item.
No correspondence was received. I did not receive any request to speak forms and no voicemails were received on this item.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, we'll kick it to the commissioners for questions of Leah or the applicant. Commissioner Villanueva, we're pretty quiet on this side. How about you?
No questions from me.
Okay. Does someone want to get into general discussion or go straight into a motion?
Commissioner Draculich, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Please go ahead.
Based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the tentative map subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, and I can make all the findings.
Commissioner Villanueva, second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right,
Commissioner
motion
Taylor,
passes.
you got to make a motion again.
Congrats. It was weird watching that. Awesome. Okay, we're going to move on to item 6.2. Case number LDC 22-00075, North Hills Multifamily. A request has been made for a conditional use permit to allow a 408-unit multifamily development that will result in fills greater than 10 feet in height. The 21.52-acre site consists of 3 parcels and is located 234 feet south of Buck Drive in between US Highway 395 and North Hills Boulevard. The site is within General Commercial Zoning District and has a master plan use designation of special planning area. And we'll go ahead and let the applicant give a presentation. Hi, Sev.
Good evening, Chairman Draculich, members of the commission. Sev Carlson with Kempfer Kroll for the record here on behalf of the applicant Morgan Stonehill Development Company. As you've indicated, the project is located near exit 74 on US 395 North and North Hills Boulevard. It's approximately 21 and a half acres, and we're intending to design and construct a 3-story wood-framed residential construction multifamily project across 3 APNs. The property is zoned general commercial. Multifamily dwellings are allowed in the GC zone as a matter of right under the municipal code. The code does require a conditional use permit, however, for projects that propose more than 100 units. This project proposes 408 units. If you look at the surrounding areas to the north, south, east, and west, we have the same GC zoning around the project boundary. The master plan land use designation is special plan area, and as we all know, the master plan is contemplating the need for additional moderate to high density housing in the Reno market. We meet some goals of that master plan by promoting responsible and well-managed growth, providing access direct for pedestrians and bicycles within this project, not only to the neighborhoods, but to the existing retail and commercial properties to the northwest, as well as access to adjacent trails, greenways, and other accessible drainage ways. So again, the requests before you tonight are the conditional use permit for multifamily with more than 100 units, and we also have elevated a major site plan review for fills that are greater than 10 feet. Here are some photos of the existing site. Another view of the existing site to get some topography and its location with respect to North Hills Boulevard. We have the general site plan here with the access points highlighted in yellow, and I'm going to turn it over for a little bit to David Jockeman with Kimley Horn. He's a licensed engineer focusing on traffic, so he'll discuss traffic and the site plan, and then I'll get back to you on some more details of the project.
Thank you, Sev. Members of the commission, thank you very much for your time tonight. My name is David Jockeman. I am a licensed civil engineer here in the state of Nevada. I've lived here in Reno for 8 years. My focus is traffic studies, transportation engineering. I've worked on small studies that are just trip generation letters to studies as big as the Las Vegas Raiders Stadium. We've received a lot of comments on this project so far through the website and what we've been made aware of that pertain to traffic. In this location in general, as well as along North Hills Boulevard, and for those of you who are unfamiliar, although you may all be familiar with the project, there is a recently completed Diverging Diamond Interchange at Lemon Valley. Some of you may go through this interchange every day. It just opened a few days ago. When we started this traffic study, we took counts that were with concurrence from the City of Reno staff, that were during construction of that interchange project. It's a very big one, even though none of the locations along this corridor are a part of that construction project. They are obviously very close to it, and traffic is diverting a little bit along this corridor. So given that, I want to take extra care when looking at this study to make sure that we are performing an analysis that is at the very least conservative, if not highly conservative. And particularly this morning, I went and observed conditions at one of these intersections, which I would not typically do as a part of a traffic study, to make sure that things are operating at least better than what was shown in the traffic study as a result of the project that was recently completed along Lemon, at the interchange of Lemon Valley. What I noticed this morning was what I would believe to be dramatically improved traffic, if you will, at the intersection of North Hills Boulevard and Buck Drive. And I'll talk a little bit more about that intersection in a bit, but that made me feel confident that the analysis we performed in the traffic study was highly conservative, given that it was during a construction project nearby. We were seeing elevated traffic levels along this corridor when we performed the study. Despite that, we used these counts that were performed during construction that are elevated, and we also took a look at everything that the RTC wanted us to include in our analysis. 2 projects of which include the widening of North Hills Boulevard and the widening of Buck Drive from 2 to 4 lanes each. So those of you who are not familiar with the project, that is to the right here, to the north of this project. Buck Drive goes along to Lemon and is north of the site. So one thing that I want to make clear from the traffic study is that we use these counts that I would characterize as highly conservative. We took the information from RTC Washoe, incorporated their plans from the Regional Transportation Plan that include the widening of North Hills Boulevard as well as Buck Drive, and the study found that there were acceptable levels of service at all study area intersections upon build-out of the project. I want to make that clear. They were all acceptable levels of service when we included the information that was given to us by RTC Washoe. So the last thing that I really want to highlight with this is that a project like this with 408 multifamily units is an opportunity for this community to collect more regional road impact fees, which are the exact sort of fees, I believe that's the RTC Washoe's program, but it's a mechanism that allows us to fund these road widening projects that will directly benefit all of the residents, everyone who patronizes this area along North Hills Boulevard, as well as Buck Drive. So thank you very much. I'll now turn it back over to Sev, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, David. So looking back at the project, we have 2 access points off North Hills Boulevard. And we'll see if there we go. Here's a colorful picture in terms of, again, another site plan. If you look along 395 North, one of the conditions that we're comfortable with is a sound wall, and so that will be accompanying the setback from 395 North for that portion of the project. We have a number of different building sizes. We have 4 12-unit buildings, 15 24-unit buildings with a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. We have pedestrian access throughout, a central playground. You will see in the right-hand corner of the photo, we have a couple of dog parks as another amenity. We have a swimming pool area. This will have on-site management as required by the code. And ultimately, we have approximately 80,000 square feet of usable open space within the landscape area. We're preserving the existing drainage way. We're not changing that. That basically bisects the middle of the project that you can see in yellow and green in the middle of the project. So that will become part of the landscape area where people will have pedestrian access. Just quickly, building elevations with a little bit of variety and articulation. The multiple floor plans, again, with different bedroom counts. We've also discussed with the neighboring commercial business owner about creating pedestrian access so the residents of this community can make it to that retail center. In terms of what could be done on this site under the general commercial zone, we're only proposing density of just under 19 dwelling units an acre. We could have up to 45 dwelling units an acre, which would more than double the 408 units. We could be just under 1,000 units if we were seeking maximum density. We're seeking well under that. You'll also see where we're meeting the other requirements in terms of lot size, width, setbacks. And then I can go through the findings if the commission would like, but I'll just quickly scroll through those. We meet all the general findings for applications. We also have the conditional use permit findings. When you look at surrounding uses, that this use is consistent. And again, focusing on that general commercial zone, I think it's important when you look at it from a policy standpoint that when the city zones property, it's putting, I always say, colors on a map, and then it adopts its code. And it says, here's what's allowed in these zones. And so the general commercial zone allows for a lot of different uses. And the commission should be mindful that multifamily is one of those uses that are allowed in the zone. With respect to staff's proposed conditions, we're comfortable with all of those conditions. Those include various mitigation measures with respect to turn lanes, stop signs, crosswalks, and we'll leave it open for any questions either of me or the Kimley Horn team. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. And now Grace from the City of Reno.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Vice Chair and Commissioners. Grace Whited, Associate Planner for the record, here to discuss the project on North Hills. So the subject site is located southeast of Lemon Drive, south of Buck Drive, and west of North Hills Boulevard. So taking a closer look at the site, you can see it's close to that grocery outlet, Smith's, and the Walmart out in Lemon Valley. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to establish a 408-unit multifamily complex with grading resulting in fills greater than 10 feet in height. Key issues associated with this project were site and building design, traffic, and compatibility with surrounding uses. So the subject site is zoned general commercial, which requires a conditional use permit for multifamily projects over 100 units. So I would like to just reiterate what Sev had said. GC zoning does allow for a density of 45 dwelling units per acre, which would be about 970 units for this site if they were going to develop at max density. So this is 408, just about half of what could be proposed. So surrounding zoning consists of general commercial and then the Wild Stallion SPD, which is residential in nature. Here is the proposed site plan. As you can see, there's 2 minor drainage ways on the site, and the applicant is planning to preserve those in their natural state, with the exception of 2 crossings for connectivity that you can see there. So as discussed, condition 5 requires the applicant to install a 6-foot tall sound wall on top of a 3-foot tall berm with a 10-foot wide landscape strip. So it's a little confusing, but I can go over that in detail. And this kind of will help mitigate any sound and visual impacts on that freeway adjacent. So these are some of the proposed elevations where you can see the buildings will be about 3 stories in height with articulation to ensure some visual interest. So although the application triggers a CUP for fills of greater than 10 feet in height, the locations of these fills are minimal and they're pretty isolated just over those drainage ways. And that's really the most grading for this site. Here is a Google Street View. So you can see it's relatively flat. Grading will be isolated to those drainage ways, which are minor, and everything else will be pretty minimal. So one of the key issues is traffic, and I think this is where we saw the most comments come in the last couple of days. So I think it's important to point out that this area is serviced by RTC Route 7 with stops off of Lemon Drive. And additionally, conditions 6 through 9 are recommended to help mitigate traffic issues. So as previously stated, North Hills and Buck Drive are anticipated to be widened in the 2026-2030 timeframe, which will help alleviate some of the congestion we see there. So the applicant is implementing the mitigation measures recommended in the traffic study to help key intersections operate at adequate levels of service. And in addition to the applicant implementing mitigation measures seen here, they will also be mitigating traffic by paying their regional road impact fees. And we see all development that comes in for a building permit pay these fees, and that's an additional mitigation measure. So here are the required findings for a conditional use permit. Staff believes that all the findings can be met and recommends approval of the conditional use permit subject to conditions in the staff report. Here's the recommended motion, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Grace. Appreciate it. Kick it to the commissioners for disclosures. Commissioner Villanueva, why don't you start us off?
No disclosures, or excuse me, I apologize. I read several emails.
Commissioner Gower?
Thank you. Received and read emails.
Commissioner Munoz, I'm familiar with the area, and I read and received emails.
Commissioner Taylor, I'm very familiar with the site, and I read and received emails, and I had a conversation with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Dracula, same disclosures. And we'll move on to public comment. We do have a couple requests to speak forms here. First one is Mr. David Baguette. You have 3 minutes. Come on up. And after David, we'll have Robbie Frank.
Thank you. My name is David Baggett. I just want to address some concerns that I have. 408 units will add a significant number of cars to that street that already cannot handle the traffic. If you go out there during 7:30 a.m. to 9 o'clock a.m., it's almost bumper to bumper traffic. Also from 3 p.m. to about 6:30 p.m., it's bumper to bumper, even before the traffic delays from construction of that on and off ramp at Lemon Drive. So that's something to be aware of. There are no buildings in their surrounding areas that are 3 stories high. This is going to be a sore thumb in our community. If there is an emergency, I want to know how they're going to be able to get in and out of and service those people that have the emergency. It's not going to happen. There will be significant delays getting people the first responders that they need. When we built the vet clinic right next door there, nobody wanted to service the water. It was not able to hook into the sewer. We have a septic tank there for that reason. I don't know that that has been disclosed, that any improvements have been made, but that should be considered. It was not allowed for us. I don't know why it would be allowed for 408 residents. The community has supported the growth of that community, but where are the businesses going to develop? If all of this land is used for more residents, why can't they put their residents a little bit farther away from the major roadways and let some businesses have some opportunity to build and actually provide services that residents that already live there need desperately? I think the biggest thing, this traffic, they're talking about widening the road. That's another 7 years down the road, if it ever happens. I don't think it's a good idea. I disapprove of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Baggett. Appreciate that. Next up, Robbie Frank, speaking in favor.
Hello, my name is Robbie Frank. I've lived in the area since about 2009. I currently live in the Golden Valley area, very close to this, and since 2017. I'm in favor, based off of a handful of reasons, that the area needs this pretty drastically. If you're not familiar, Chewy and Amazon just opened up across the highway, both companies needing at least 1,000 employees to work in the building. The vast majority of those employees currently commute from various places around the city. And there is one bus that goes there, but the companies are slowly dying based off of my conversations and my experience there because of the lack of people able to get into the area. This development would significantly increase the population of the area, which could use bikes in the new bike lane that was just created and opened up over this last weekend, and provide a situation for the Golden Valley and Lemon Valley residents where they actually have a housing option to go to work at a lot of these businesses that they previously didn't. So it's a good opportunity for people that want to move in the area and work at those businesses to be able to have a place to live and not pay $6 a gallon in gas to get to work. Secondly, as far as giving an opportunity for businesses to develop there, I also own a parcel that is adjacent to this development and do plan to create business there. And when I heard about this project going on, I knew it would be beneficial for not only business creation, which I hope to do, but the surrounding businesses, such as the carniceria that just opened up down the road. People could walk there. And it's, in my opinion, going to be a very good addition to the place that I live. I'm in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Michelle, do we have any public comment through voicemail?
There are no voicemails received. We did receive correspondence. There was one in favor, 22 in opposition. All correspondence was forwarded to the commission and are part of the record. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. We do have April Barker that registered to speak via Zoom. I'm not sure if she wants to speak now. April, if you want to speak, could you raise your hand? Okay. We did have another person register to speak, but he's not online, so. April, can you hear us? You're muted.
Unmute myself.
Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So
Can
are
you
you ready to make public comment?
I am. Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi. Hello.
Hi. You'll be given 3 minutes for public comment, okay?
Okay, great. We live very close to this area. We live up the street. And I do agree with the first man that spoke, saying that there is heavy traffic all the time. I'm not sure how you would widen North Hills Boulevard without demolishing something, because it's pretty much, there are things on either side of the road. Businesses, mostly gas stations, restaurants. Also, 408 units is huge. 3 stories is definitely going to be an eyesore. I just feel that we're creating a ghetto, basically. Like, in my opinion, we're creating a ghetto by putting in so much multifamily housing in such a small area. We have trailer parks, and I mean, just within a mile of my house, there are probably 3 trailer parks. I feel like we have a concentration of low-income housing instead of a nice balance. And I feel like balanced neighborhoods are extremely important. The mix of warehouses and trailer parks. I mean, we have enough. And multifamily housing is definitely not what we need on North Hills Boulevard. I would love to see like a mathnasium. Let's get a tutoring center there for our kids. I love their dog park idea, let's do it. You want to do that? I love that idea, but let's just forego the 408 units. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, April. Anyone else, Michelle? Anybody else in the room want to speak? Okay, thank you. We'll kick it to the commissioners for questions.
You want to close public comment?
Oh, close public comment. My apologies.
I'll start, please. Thank you. This is going to be for staff. Hi, Grace. It's been brought in several emails and comment tonight about the compatibility of the existing area and the three-story buildings. Looking at what's proposed or what we're seeing here in the presentation, how does city justify the compatibility with the 3 stories?
Yeah, so it's under Grace Whited, Associate Planner for the record. GC actually allows for 65 feet in height, so it is under what is permitted in that GC zone. And we think it is fairly compatible with the area. You see kind of commercial to the north of the site, and then you have some lower density residential to the east of the site in that Wild Stallion SPD. And so I think it serves as a nice transition. You'll have a higher density closer to the freeway and closer to those services. And so naturally it's going to be taller in nature, and it's still under what is permitted in that GC zone. So that's how we kind of made that compatibility finding.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair, can I go?
I'm so sorry, I'm new. You may go, Commissioner Gower.
Thank you. Question for the applicant regarding traffic, and I'm hoping that if it's possible to pull up table 4 in the traffic study from the staff report, we could do that.
Yeah. Is your presentation, does it have table 4 in there?
There it is.
It did not.
Okay. Way that Sylvia can see that.
So, yeah, I mean, I think this is good. If you could just pull it down a little bit so we can see the upper part of that column there with the date range. Yeah, perfect. So I'm hoping we can just spend a minute kind of talking through this this table and what it's telling us. So it's my understanding that for each of those intersections analyzed, you have the existing level of service in there, and then with the proposed improvements to the far right, what the level of service would be for each of those intersections. Is that right?
This is David Jockman, and that is correct. The 3 columns, in the first one you have 2022 existing. So that is conditions that were observed out in the field, not today, but recently, which was during construction of the interchange. The second column is 2026 background conditions. So this is to establish the baseline for what will be there upon project completion with the information we've been given from RTC, City of Reno, NDOT, of which did not have any comment, to establish what conditions will be like with that information. And then we add the project in for the third column.
Okay, so between now and 2026, when RTC is telling us that those improvements, intersection improvements will occur, so we go from, the Buck Drive North Hills intersection obviously stands out because we're at level of service F in the afternoon there. So RTC is telling us that level of service will change from F with the improvements to kind of depending on the movement between C and B LOS, right?
That is correct. And I will add to that this is conservative because these counts were taken during construction. So if any vehicles are no longer diverting along North Hills Boulevard and Buck Drive, the results would actually be even better.
Okay. And so then we move into the final column there. So with this project, with what you've modeled as the trip generation from the project, with the improvements that RTC is telling us that are going to happen to those intersections, the worst LOS that we're going to be looking at is a level of service D on the North Hills Boulevard and Beckworth Drive intersection and North Hills Boulevard at Golden Valley Road, right? Oh, and I guess with Lemon Drive and Sky Vista.
So the first intersection you listed was North Hills Boulevard and Golden Valley Road. Yes, that's correct. That one. What was the second one?
So looking at the
Vista.
row.
Number 1.
Yep.
Yes, that's correct.
So really we go from a situation where we have the worst level of service being F with a couple of E's with existing conditions, with the improvements being proposed by RTC. Even with the project, really the worst that we get is a level of service D.
That's correct. Would you like me to elaborate on intersection 2, Buck Drive and North Hills Boulevard?
Yes, please.
So that intersection is currently an all-way stop, 3-way stop, and that intersection has a single lane approach in each direction. One of those approaches is largely residential. The other 2 approaches are largely, I don't want to say regional traffic, but those approaches are not being patronized just by the nearby residents. There are other vehicles on the road there as well. The mitigations that we suggested in this report include coordination with the RTC, because if we assume, which is again conservative, if we assume that construction will not improve anything on this corridor, but we do include, as requested by the RTC, our initial traffic study actually didn't include that, and they asked us to include the road widening projects in our background and background plus project analyses. This is how the same number of vehicles grown into the future, into 2026, will operate at that intersection. The truth about Buck Drive and North Hills Boulevard is that it's currently an all-way stop, and if you want to optimize operations at that intersection, an all-way stop is not optimal. The main approaches are the eastbound approach in terms of volume, and particularly the eastbound to southbound right, and the northbound to westbound left. So folks are coming along Buck Drive eastbound, and they're coming along North Hills Boulevard northbound. Given that those are the 2 main volumes, it would make sense, it would be desirable to have those approaches not be stop controlled, and to stop control the westbound approach, which would be the residents. So I'm taking a long time to answer this, but I know it's important, so I'm going into detail. That would be the optimal configuration for operations, for level of service. That's not the most important thing. Safety is also an important thing whenever you're talking about transportation, traffic in general. And so what I put in as a mitigation was ongoing coordination with the RTC, because the optimal intersection configuration at that location for operations is a little bit different than would be for safety. From the safety component, it's not desirable to have 2 adjacent approaches be free, and to do so you would have to include a stripe through the intersection. We have that at Stead Boulevard. For residents up there, there's an intersection, as you're heading into Reno, coming off of Stead, you have an intersection that's like this, where the northbound approach and the off-ramp are adjacent and stop controlled. Just trying to give you a picture of what that would look like, and it's less than optimal from a safety perspective. So we need to have that ongoing coordination to make sure that we achieve the best solution.
Great. No, I appreciate the detailed answer. And I guess my last question on this is, so between 2022 current time frame, 2026, so we've got the RTC improvements proposed by then. What is the phasing plan for the project? So could we have a scenario where the project is moving forward with the mitigations that are conditioned, but RTC is potentially lagging with some of the regional road improvements? Could that be a scenario?
It's under the RTC's jurisdiction, so it absolutely could happen. I can't speak for the RTC. I can't speak for NDOT. Obviously, can't speak for the city of Reno. But when the RTC asks us to include them in that future build out, to me that means that they are thinking about this actively in the near term, and I will further emphasize that the impact fees, which would be greater from a 408 unit development, go towards those projects, those road widening projects that RTC has. And so fees that would be collected as a result of this project allow the RTC to undertake those road widening projects.
Okay, thank you. Sev, maybe I can follow up with you just for clarification on that phasing plan, just to get an understanding of, what that potential gap is, if any, between, when the trips could be generated versus, when those RTC improvements would come online.
Right. So Commissioner Gower, Sev Carlson for the record. Give me 10 seconds. Let me check with the client in terms of the construction schedule, and I'll.
Good.
All right. So we're looking really at probably a 4-year horizon. So we have, a year in terms of we go through building permit process after this. We have grading. We have the infrastructure piece. So we're looking at, pipes, drains, all of those components. Now and then we have basically a 3-year construction window. So that's where it gets us to 4 years. Now, as buildings come online, we'll have some occupancy relative to that, but it will be staggered. So if we're at 4 years from now, we're at summer of 2026 at that point. So at least if RTC is on schedule and we're paying our regional road impact fees that help RTC pay for the improvements, right now we're roughly at being at full build out. And then what's the market as to full occupancy? I mean, that remains to be seen, but right, worst case scenario or best case scenario, however you want to look at it, if we're occupied fully at the end of 4 years, we should be in that same time frame as RTC.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Mr. Vice Chair, if I could, one last question for staff. The Washoe County School District brought up in their comments some of the same concerns regarding the future level of service. I think we've talked through those. They also brought up intersection improvements for safe routes to school that I think are quite far away from the project. If I understand, it's down on Beckworth and Discovery Lane. So how does staff deal with a request like that relative to, this application?
Yeah, so that is kind of tough. It's out of the scope of this development. I would say that's kind of more of a recommendation for our Public Works team or RTC in general to notice that there is a gap there. But I was going to pull up the map. It is outside of the scope of this project, and so it's not an improvement they can make. I did want to point out, they are implementing all of the mitigation measures within the traffic study, which we don't see very often. And that does include, crosswalks within their scope and stop signs within their scope. So we can't obviously make them go fix everything within the Lemon Valley area. So that was kind of determined to be a little outside of this project's scope.
Okay, but staff acknowledged it sounds like, and, you're part of the safe routes, maybe not you specifically, but City of Reno is part of the safe routes to school kind of coordination group that the school district leads up, right?
So it is run by Washoe County School District. They have a safe routes to school designated person who reviews all of our projects to see what those routes are. But the gap is noted, and I think that's for further coordination with Public Works and safe routes to school.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Commissioner Taylor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Commissioner Taylor, I have a couple questions, probably for the applicant first. Can you confirm what the peak hour trip generation is going to be?
1 minute, please. So I didn't print the appendix out. 3 of the 4 intersections in this study, the AM peak hour is 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. The PM peak hour, I can look at my notes really quick, but we always look at 4 to 6 p.m. for the PM peak hour and then identify the peak hour within those 2 hours.
So how many trips are going to be generated? Because it says.
I'm sorry, generated. Approximately 200, most of which are ingress.
Out of 2 accesses on North Hills.
That is correct.
So the other question I had is RTC says that the time frame, from what I can read, is for improvements is 2026 to 2030. So somewhere in that time frame, they've identified improvements, major improvements to North Hills Boulevard and Buck Drive.
That is correct.
Based on your phasing,
That's my understanding.
4 years build out, we could be seeing that trip generation prior to any improvements from RTC.
It is speculative to answer that, but that could be the case. And so,
well, if we're at 2022, and they say they're not going to start even maybe look at improvements until 2026, and we're at a 4-year build, that puts us at 2026 build out, if everything goes as planned.
I agree with you. And the initial version of this study that I prepared did not take those projects into account. I like to agree with you and cast doubt on when those projects may occur. So the initial version of the traffic study that I had prepared did not include those projects. Those were requested to be included in this report by the RTC.
So you're saying that even without these projects, with that trip generation, without these improvements, the level of service is sufficient to mitigate traffic?
No, that is not what I'm saying. In the initial version of the traffic study, what I requested of the city of Reno was that we perform counts again after completion of the construction project, which would also need to occur during school times because there are some nearby schools to this corridor to the northeast. There's, I believe, a middle school. There's a high school also nearby. And so it would be prudent to take the counts during those times. Another thing that we did with regard to the peak hour question that you had was the peak hours often fall a little earlier in North Valleys than the rest of Reno. This is due to the nature of the commuting nature, particularly, well, in both, but particularly in the morning. So one thing we wanted to do is make sure that we fully capture when the peak is actually occurring. And we we expanded, I should say, the peak hours from 7 to 9 to 6 to 9 to make sure we capture that. One of the 4 intersections did occur slightly, the beginning of that peak hour occurred slightly before 7. We did the same thing in the PM from 3 till 6.
So we could see no improvements on North Hills Road, Buck Drive from RTC, and a full build out of this project. That's a possibility, traffic-wise.
It's speculative, and then I can't comment for RTC.
But it's a possibility. What I'm trying to get at is these improvements on North Hills Road, like you said, is speculative, or Buck Drive is speculative. There could not be any of these improvements, or they might happen in 2030, and you would still have a project at full build out at 2026 that's going to be generating 200 cars at peak hours, 6 to 9, whatever.
Yeah, and the full breakdown I have now on the screen for when the ingress, the ins and outs for the AM and the PM peak hour, as estimated by the ITE trip generation manual, are up there. So in the PM peak, you're looking at 208 vehicles. I do want to add some emphasis to that these conditions that are in North Valleys, which I wanted to be cognizant of. That's why I spent the morning out there looking at Buck Drive and North Hills Boulevard, because that's the intersection of most interest, I would say, in this study. And what I observed, I don't have the data in front of me. I just made qualitative observations. The DDI, the Diverging Diamond Interchange project at Lemon Valley, was just completed. That absolutely has an impact on every intersection within a half mile, if not a mile of that project, due to the importance of that for traffic that is at all related to Lemon. And so what I observed was that in the peak hour at that intersection in particular in the AM is 7 to 8 a.m. I know some of the comments came here saying that there's massive queuing between 7:30 and 9. So we took a look at that intersection in thorough detail between 6 and 9 a.m. The peak is at 7 to 8, not 7:30 to 9. And during that peak today, there were no more than 3 vehicles queued in any approach at any time during that hour, which is a lot less than what's in this study. And that's why I would like to highlight that this is very conservative.
I don't.
Excuse me.
So I am going to ask Mike Michelle really quick for something because he's here. We don't want him to feel left out. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you for including me. Mike Michelle, Engineering Manager.
Of course. Without any of the improvements in RTP, in the RTC's RTP 2026 to 2030, without any of those in this development, does the level of service function properly?
Without RTC doing any improvements, the traffic will be worse in the area. I mean, you're adding more traffic to intersections that already don't operate at satisfactory levels.
Thank you very much, Mike. I wish I had more, but I don't. And then I have a question for Grace really quick. Sorry, commissioners. I haven't got to talk in a long time. Thank you, Grace. When we look at compatibility, a lot of times in our reports, we'll get a table that shows the surrounding uses and how it is compatible. And in this report, it talks a lot about the adjacent land as far as it being open space, the vet clinic, GC. How does residential 400 units fit into the compatibility of this?
Yeah, so sometimes you'll see the table with, to the north is this, to the east is this, to the west is this. So I apologize, I'll put that in future ones. For this particular case, it's very mixed in nature. So you have that Smith's, the grocery outlet shopping center, the vet clinic, and then the residential to the east, and then you've got vacant land. And I think because of that the multifamily does fit in well because you have services in walkable proximity. You have it, basically adjacent to a bus line, and it's still kind of that transition from a higher density adjacent to the freeway to a nice lower density detached single family to the east in that Wild Stallion SPD. So although it's not all uniform where you'll just see rows of multifamily, I think that's why it's compatible because it offers those future residents close proximity to services as well as having a nice transition instead of just putting a harsh, intense use on this parcel, like an industrial would not be compatible with this area.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Commissioner Villanueva, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I have a few questions. I got a bunch of emails, so I'm kind of just going to go through to get some of their questions answered. We talked a lot about traffic, so I won't go into that, but I had questions regarding erosion and flooding resulting from the grading. And so if the rep or the applicant would like to touch on that.
Hi there, Chris Wechter for the record. I'm a civil engineer working on the project.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I received some emails with concerns regarding some of the grading. Can it might be helpful to pull up the photo with the, I'm trying to think of the photo with the image of the drainage.
Yeah, certainly. Can we get the presentation up? the applicant presentation. Could we get that up? Okay, thanks. Thank you. Oops. There we go. All right. Great. So as you can see in this exhibit, there's the two minor drainage ways that go across. And I know we don't have I think what you're looking for is the cut fill map that shows the distribution of the grading throughout the site. Is that correct?
Yeah, and well, that would be helpful, but if you can just touch on if you guys are addressing any risk of flooding or erosion, or if that's even at risk here, if there's any risk of flooding in this space.
Yeah, certainly. So there's two minor drainage ways that go through the site. They are 30-inch culverts right now that are sized adequately. We've looked at the surrounding drainage for the site. We did look at the drainage across the site in general for flow. Like, it basically goes from south to north, as seen where the retention basin is in the northern section. And we're not seeing any issues of erosion for this area, being that the stormwater can be isolated to the parking areas, which direct basically to north in consistent drainage patterns.
Okay, is the drainage can you point to it with your arrow? Does it cut right through the site?
Yeah, let me see here. There we go. Yeah, so right here. So that cuts through right here and cuts through right here as well.
I see. Okay, so yeah, you guys don't have any housing there. Okay, and then next question is probably more appropriate for the rep. So thank you for
no problem.
Answers.
Thank you.
Those questions. Hello, good evening. So I had a lot of questions regarding emergency response and access. And I noticed in the report, you guys have information regarding police impact fees and traffic impact fees and things like that. How are we addressing emergency response with the development?
Yeah, so this is Sev Carlson for the record. So obviously the application has been reviewed by Reno Police and Reno Fire. They didn't raise any concerns. We have the two access points. We're following code relative to the ability of getting equipment in and out of the project. I don't know if staff has any further input on that, but it was never identified as a yellow or a red flag for us. And obviously we're designed to code relative to fire safety.
Okay, and then can you explain about, the report says police impact fees. Can you talk a little bit about that? All right, that might be more appropriate for the city unless you have something you'd like to share, but.
I'll defer to staff on that.
All right.
Yeah.
Hi,
So,
Grace.
hi. So just to touch on fire response. So the closest station is Fire Station 10 with a response time of 7 minutes. So they will have to sprinkler their buildings. I think the threshold is 6 minutes. And so that's just per code. And then as for police impact fees, it's a relatively new fee. I think it's within the last 2 years. And so every development has to pay certain impact fees. And one of those is police impact. So that will be collected at time of building permit, just as those regional road impact fees will be collected and some other impact fees as well.
And can you explain, just dive a little deeper and explain how those are used, what those fees go to?
Yeah, so I can't speak to them in detail. I know that they go to our police services. I'm not sure the breakdown of kind of what those fees go to, but I know it's so that they can maintain adequate service for these new developments.
Okay, and we had one of the commenters, and I did also have emails on this, and I think it's appropriate for you, but you can let me know. For water, I know we had the veterinarian say that he had to connect to a septic tank, and in the report I see that there's access to pipe into the city. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, so they will have to receive or obtain a water will serve and a sewer will serve letter prior to construction. I can obviously defer to Mike Michelle, our engineering manager, for more detail, but I don't believe we would allow them to hook up to septic. They did provide a sewer report in this study, and so they would hook up to sewer and get that sewer will serve to make sure that there is adequate infrastructure for this development.
Okay, so unlike the veterinarian, these folks will be able to connect to water and sewage.
That's correct.
All right. Okay. And I think I also had just general, this is a general comment, not for you, Grace, but I also, I saw the Washoe County School District concerns, and I know Commissioner, one of the other commissioners, Gower, I believe it was, touched on this. And so I appreciate that. I'm not going to reiterate any of those questions, but I will share a comment. I think with the school district, I totally think that they have very valid concerns, but it seems that with some of these developments, a school won't be built unless we have the development. It's almost as if we built it, they'll come. I don't know if that's appropriate or if that's how policy should work, but I feel like that's how it does work. And so, so I think I don't really have concerns with the Washoe County School District. I think a school does need to be built, but I don't think this project is going to be able to address any of the school's concerns regarding any of that. So thank you, Commissioner Gower. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Villanueva. Appreciate that. Any other commissioners' questions for applicant or City of Reno?
Yeah, thank you. This is going to be for the applicant's traffic engineer. So you had stated that you had been up there recently to do counts and observation. Do you know specifically what day that was or when you were up there last?
So I was out there this morning for qualitative observation.
Okay.
Are you asking about, is that what you were asking about?
The entire, well, that's what I want to know. I want to know, it was this morning that you had spoke about. I wanted to clarify that. And then before, you said during construction on the intersection at Lemon and 395, what were the days or what was the time frame when you were out there for those counts?
Those were performed on table 1 of the report. And again, my name is David Jockerman. That was performed Tuesday, March 1st this year for all 4 study area intersections. That was also performed between 6 and 9 a.m. and 3 to 6 p.m., which is outside the standard, in addition to the standard, which is 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner Munoz?
Nothing else.
Okay. Anybody else on the commission questions? Or if you're ready to move into discussion, Commissioner Gower, go ahead.
I'm not ready to move into discussion. I was waiting to see if you had any questions. I wanted to make sure you.
Thank you for considering me in this new role. No, a lot of my questions have been answered, so thank you all for asking them. Phil, I'm ready.
If I could, Mr. Vice Chair, just ask Mike Michelle one follow-up question on the traffic related to finding number 3 under the general review considerations.
Please.
Mike Michelle, engineering manager for the record.
Thanks, Mike. So that finding talks about, mitigating traffic impacts. What we've heard, I think, is that there is a likelihood at some point in the future that we will achieve acceptable levels of service in these areas. Is that what you're hearing?
Yes, in time.
In time. There is also a period of time where there's the potential that we will not be achieving the levels of service, right?
Correct.
So how do we address that finding if there's a near-term scenario where we cannot make the finding and there's a longer-term scenario where we can make the finding?
I would say that this applicant is doing everything within their reason to provide mitigation. They will be dedicating right away. They'll have deceleration lanes. They'll pay their fees. I think they're doing what they can reasonably do. The key here is to get RTC to do their project as quickly as possible.
Does the city, so for a long time, the city of Reno looked at the concept of concurrency. Does the city still consider that as a concept when looking at projects? Concurrency in the sense that the infrastructure is there at the time of development.
We rely on RTC to do capacity street projects. So we are reliant on them. We do have representatives on that board. It's up to us to lobby as best we can for our projects. But the concept of concurrency, you also have a nexus finding that you have to make. I mean, we can't make these guys go out and, improve, half of Lemon Valley, They're doing what they can do, is what I'm saying, within reason.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Mr. Vice Chair, I have one more question. I
You may.
apologize.
Good.
Thank you. Grace, I'm sorry, I need one more clarification from you. And actually, it's Commissioner Gower's fault. So. The Washoe County School District, there's a comment in our packet that I don't think that we usually see. So it says it's on, I don't even know what page it is. It's probably 74 of 75, but the Washoe County School District has general concerns with the provided traffic impact study, as there are several analyzed intersections that appear to operate at level of service F. And it goes on. Granted, we have talked about traffic and the possible improvements to it, but is this something that Washoe County School District usually, I'm just not used to seeing it in our packets where they would make a statement like this.
I haven't seen it before. I mean, granted, I haven't been doing this for a super long time, but I think that their comments kind of range depending on the project. So it's not a super consistent thing we see. But I think because traffic is obviously an issue up here, they felt it necessary to comment on it. But I did want to say that this was written for their previous traffic study that demonstrated prior to the RTP or RTC improvements. So when they originally submitted the application, it was that initial traffic study we had discussed, and then they revised it with those improvements. So that's also probably why they commented on it. And then just to touch on that finding, I think it's really difficult in these areas. We kind of experience growing pains sometimes, and the finding is to mitigate traffic, and the applicant is doing so in multiple ways. And so that was kind of where staff was able to make that finding, because I know that can be an issue in this area.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
No problem. Any more questions? Move into discussion. I'd say we move into discussion. Commissioner Villanueva, you want to bring anything into the discussion?
I do. I'm just looking for what I was going to present. So I'm going to defer to somebody else for right now. Thank you.
Commissioner Gower.
Thank you. So I'll just kind of summarize where I'm at with this. So we have a scenario where we have a finding that we have to make relative to mitigating traffic. We also have a finding that we have to make relative to conformance with the master plan. The master plan addresses or includes the concept of concurrency management system. So it's essentially the provision of services to support growth. I'm looking at that policy right now, and it essentially says that, if the infrastructure isn't there to allow the city to meet its service targets, which include the level of service standards that we have, then the development shouldn't move forward. The challenge that we have relative to that finding and that policy that Mike Michelle did a good job summarizing is that within the ability of this project and this developer, they're doing kind of everything within their, within reason to make that finding and to address that policy. Asking them to do more would be, as Mike put it, pointing out the nexus consideration, would just be frankly asking them to, do RTC's job for them. So that's not really fair to the developer. So the challenge that we find ourselves in is that there's the potential, and frankly, I see it as a likelihood of there being 1 to 4 or 5 years where the level of service at these intersections is going to get worse. And it's not just going to be 1 or 2 intersections that are not meeting our city standard for level of service. It could potentially be more. So in the near term, really we're going in the wrong direction relative to that finding and to that policy. In the longer term, once RTC moves forward with their projects that are in the regional transportation plan, we're really in a scenario where it's an improvement. So you've got the project plus the RTC's improvement. All of those intersections are a lot better. And to the applicant's representative's point, the regional road impact fees contribute to RTC's ability to improve the conditions in that area, their ability to implement those projects. So we really have a trade-off of, are we comfortable moving forward with a project that would provide funding to allow the RTC to implement those improvements, or are we uncomfortable with a near-term scenario, that 1 to 5 year scenario, where the level of service gets worse and we can't make our findings relative to traffic and the master plan? So it's that balance. I mean, that's really, for traffic, that's really kind of the question, as I see it, that we're being asked to make. And I don't have an answer in terms of where I'm landing. I'm just kind of summarizing the way I'm seeing this. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
No problem. I'll jump in there too, just piggyback. That's where I've been sitting this whole time, exactly where you're at. It's hard to see a project like this, which I'd like to see come to term. I mean, I believe there's compatibility there. I like the product. They could have been bigger and more units, and they didn't. We've got businesses to the south and the north. I think residential does fit for me. And you're right, we're just rolling the dice if RTC is going to get it done in time so where we don't affect the residents. I don't have a good answer there, but I would like to see some level of solution. And I don't know if there is any level of condition to where maybe they can't take occupancy until RTC is either moving forward and phased out and we can, something reasonable to be looking at, or, knowing that what their impact fees are going to be paying for that. And maybe it is a delay in their project by a year or two instead of a 4 or 5 year delay in their project if we're just waiting for RTC, which maybe without their funds doesn't come to term. So I'm kind of sitting in a tough space, but I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Munoz, I've made it very clear to this commission that loss of more commercial space up there to residential housing is a detriment to that community, 100%. And I will say that outright again. I believe it's a detriment to the community. What we're doing is we're forcing everybody that lives up there to travel outside of the area for their shopping, for their entertainment, for their needs. They cannot be met up there. Adding another 408 residents in an already extremely crowded area is a bad idea in my view. I can't, and I'm going through and listening and trying to justify this, and I cannot justify it. RTC, we've had this conversation multiple times, but the same area on Military, and it wasn't that they were going to improve the roads by 2026 to 2030. They were going to take a look at it by 2030. There was no plan that it was going to be done. They were going to address it by 2030 and then do something about it at the latest date. So in my eyes, I see this as the traffic not being mitigated or taken care of until addressed 2030, and then so many years after that before it's actually implemented and something's done about it. that road was just recently, probably within, I would say 14 months, was just completed. It just redone the entire road. And when they do decide to make that into 4 lanes, they're gonna have to take some properties out there. There's not enough room. It's barely big enough for 2 lanes as it is now. So in my eyes, I can't justify this. I do not think the product with the 3 stories fits the location. I don't believe it fits the area. I believe, as it was said in some of the emails and addressed tonight, it would be an eyesore. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Commissioner Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I agree with you, Commissioner Gower, and it's an interesting position, but I think rarely do we have such a black and white answer from our engineering team here where we hear, yes, it's a bad situation now. If we put 400 more houses out there, it's going to be much worse. And for me, that is, and listening to all the people out there who live out there, and I'm out there once a day, if not twice a day, driving through the intersection for work in the DDI, and yes, it has improved, but traffic out there is pretty heavy. I'm not an engineer, and I don't want to say it's awful, but it's pretty heavy. So I'm having a hard time supporting the benefit, and I always look at housing too, because we know we need housing. But if we have people saying in Washoe County School District saying they have concerns, what I have to go with is in my staff report. They have concerns about some of the intersections. They have concerns about the traffic. We don't see that a lot in our packets or in the information that we receive. So I'm just not comfortable moving forward with this project as it is. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Commissioner Villanueva?
All very good comments. Definitely a tough decision. I think ideally development and RTC and the city's infrastructure would move in lockstep. Everything would, work together. Unfortunately, it does appear that development's happening more than or faster than the infrastructure's happening. That appears to be happening all over the city. And I'm already not really a big proponent of sprawl, but I do think multifamily is a good thing. And also, I think with the traffic, it kind of makes us realize, we do need to start looking at public transit as an option. And this is a good example of that. No one wants to sit in traffic for hours. Maybe we need to start, taking a look at ourselves and seeing how our day-to-day decision-making is impacting that. But nevertheless, that doesn't negate the need for thoughtful development. And there's definitely a balance. So I think in considering everything, I do like that this development is on the other side of the freeway, because just on the other side, we have a bunch of warehouses. And I would very much be concerned if this was on the other side with the warehouses. I think that would be very problematic to traffic, given that consumer vehicles would be on the road with big semis and big rigs. That would be a problem for me. But it is on the side with residential and businesses. So I feel like my concern there is alleviated with regard to compatibility. And then the school district does say that new schools are dependent upon regional residential growth. And I think it kind of goes to my point earlier where as much as I don't like this, it does appear that we're getting infrastructure and city development, such as schools, only when development happens, only when commercial development or properties and residential development are first developed. So I think, I think I think Washoe County School District understands that a school's not going to be built if we don't have development there. Again, I don't agree with it. I'm just reading what they said and kind of looking at the practical components that we face. So that's kind of where I am. I think I'm for it. I don't necessarily like this these type of developments, generally speaking. But given the compatibility in this case, given that it's multifamily, given that it's also near public transit, I think a lot of those concerns I generally have are alleviated.
Thank you, Commissioner Villanueva. Anybody have more discussion? You look like you're ready, Commissioner Taylor, to ask more questions. No? All right. Crunch time. Someone want to put forward a motion? Commissioner Villanueva, if you are on mute. You're still on mute, Commissioner.
I said I can put forward a motion, which is very rare for me. So based upon compliance with applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit subject to the conditions listed in the staff report.
Thank you. Do we have a second? No second. Motion fails without a second. Motion dies. Any other motions?
Commissioner Munoz, I can make a motion.
Please do.
The case of LDC 22-00075 North Hills Multifamily, based on non-compliance with applicable findings, I move to deny the conditional use permit as listed in the staff report.
All right, can we get a second?
Commissioner Taylor, a second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Gower?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I want to just reiterate that the magnitude of the near-term impacts for me relative to traffic and being my ability to meet that finding 3, mitigate traffic impacts, and our finding relative to the master plan prevent me from being able to approve this project. It's just, as Commissioner Taylor mentioned, it's not just that we have a intersection that's at a level of service D and it's kind of migrating into an E or an F scenario. We have intersections that are really functioning at the almost lowest level of service, and we're saying that we're going to add to that and create a situation where for up to 5 years or more, depending on RTC, it could really be a pretty bad situation traffic-wise out there that would be exacerbated by this project. So it's that near-term magnitude for me that doesn't allow me to make that finding. I think in 2030, we could be in great shape with this project. But again, magnitude of near term, I can't quite get there. I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Welcome. Any other discussion? All right, we'll take it to a vote. Michelle?
You want to do a roll call vote?
Please, thank you.
Okay, Draculich?
No.
Okay, this is a motion to
Non-compliance, yeah.
deny.
Yeah.
So
I'm not in favor
you're
of the
not in
denial.
favor?
Not
Okay.
in favor.
I just want to make sure we're clear. Okay. Gower?
Yes.
Munoz?
Yes.
Villanueva?
So I believe I'm a no, right? If this is a motion to deny,
Correct.
I think that's how that works.
Okay, Taylor?
Yes.
So the motion passes 3-2
Okay.
to deny. Could you please read the appeal process into the record?
Do you have that handy? Appeal process. Any final action, not including recommendations or failure to take action by the Planning Commission, may be appealed to the Reno City Council by the applicant, the mayor or a city council member, or any person who is aggrieved by the action or inaction. An appeal, together with fees, must be filed with the city clerk within 10 business days, starting on the day after written notice of the action is filed with the city clerk. If applicant has elected to use the former zoning code in effect prior to January 13th, 2021, as authorized per RMC 18-01-0602, appeals must be filed within 10 calendar days, starting on the day after written notice of the action is filed with the city clerk. And if the 10th calendar day falls on a weekend or holiday when the clerk's office is not open, the appeal may be filed the next business day. Thank you. Item closed. Is that correct? Oh, yeah, thank you. You have it open for me. Moving to item number 7, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report. Is that you, Commissioner Gower?
Commissioner Johnson typically takes these, and he does so
I
much
know.
better than I do.
So we'll move on and close item number 7.
I have no update. Yeah, thank
Great.
you.
Closing item number 7, moving to item number 8, staff announcements.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jason Garcia-Lebu, Planning Manager for the record. Just some updates. Tonight was our first meeting with our PrimeGov system. So we've switched from our Minute Track system. So it seems everything went well, I'm assuming, over there. But we're learning. So, and welcome, Clerk, in observation in the background for City Council. Second item on my list, July 21st will be a Thursday meeting. There's a city council on the 20th. So just as a reminder, that will be on July 21st. That's a Thursday. Third on the list is staff is currently preparing a training. I've mentioned at the last couple meetings. That will be on August 3rd. So we'll bring that before your commission to hopefully answer some of those compatibility and consistency, I'll just call them challenges when we have projects come through. Tonight was a great example of that, when staff has to evaluate a project and make findings with the master plan or kind of other associated City of Reno documents or even regional plans. So in addition to that, the City Council I mentioned a minute ago is their next meeting is July 20th. They recently authorized that initiation of the Title 18 items. We're currently in process. We expect 6 to 9 months on those items to start bringing some of those amendments forward. I'm going to say fingers crossed with that. So if there's any other items, please let me know. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question.
You may.
You may have answered this last time, but my memory is done. Where's the tree ordinance?
That is part of those
Oh, okay.
associated items. There's currently a draft in state, but staff is still kind of working through those issues.
Okay, I'm
as far as kind of
not
next,
in a hurry. I just was curious.
As far as kind of next steps, that would come back before your planning commission. So for a recommendation to council.
I asked that a month ago too. All right, if that's it on item number 8, we'll move to item number 9, Commissioner's suggestions for future agenda items.
Feel free to follow up with
Commissioner Villanueva, see your finger.
Yeah, I'm actually wondering if we could get a presentation from the Clark County School District, or not Clark, Washoe County School District. I don't even know if that's anything that's, we could receive, but I'm just kind of curious as far as like the development with the types of schools that we're going to see in the community. I think it's relevant given the item that we had today.
We can inquire on that. I think the focus of the commission is really with the development aspect of that. So we'd probably want to make sure that the presentation was relevant to that topic, but yeah, I'll look into it.
Development of schools. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Just like the development and where they're located within the city and the region.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Closing item number 9. Moving on to item number 10, public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for any general public comment. I don't see
Did
anybody
not
in the room.
receive
Michelle?
anything for this item.
Okay. Closing item number 10, public comment. Moving to item number 11 for adjournment.
So moved.
Aye.
Aye. You did.